Hi everyone, it's Patricia Warby here of Alchemy Therapies and my emotional audit. And today I want to talk about trauma and sensitivity and how they combine, using perhaps a real life example of somebody who really struggled. Now, sensitivity or being a highly sensitive person it's gradually becoming well known and accepted that there are certain people who don't have a normal range of emotional sensitivity. They kind of are much more highly attuned to emotional things. And they find it very difficult to process criticism or hurt. And it takes them a long time to calm down. I say they, I should say we, because I'm also highly sensitive. Um, a couple of months ago, I recorded one of these sessions on a celebrity, Sinead O'Connor, and I received a lot of criticism for that, as you do when you stick your neck out online, for making, some assumptions about how she died. So I'm not going to do that this time. But I do want to draw on the example of somebody who died this week, very, very sadly, Matthew Perry, who played Chandler in the series Friends, and he was only 54, which is younger than me, which is so shocking and so sad. And he was absolutely certainly a highly sensitive person. How can I tell? I can kind of read what he said over the years and interpreted what other people have said about him. And he has said that, he found it very, very difficult if people didn't laugh in the right places to the lines he delivered. He was sure fame was going to solve the problem for him, that he felt so inadequate in some ways. And he began drinking in order to cope with the feelings of inadequacy. And over the years, he had some addictions to drink, cocaine and Vicodin, which is a painkiller after a very nasty accident that he had. I think it was a jet ski crash. And so over the years, he really struggled. And he quotes the fact that he had over 16,000 AA sessions and hundreds of hours of therapy over decades. And none of it seems to have really helped to any major degree, in that he was still finding life very hard, although he was in a positive place, according to the last person who spoke to him. And so this sad loss, for reasons we don't yet know, the toxicology reports may help us understand, seem to be related to perhaps the addictions that he struggled with all his life. And so I wanted to in tribute to him, really, who I thought he was such a superb comedian, but also he seemed like a really genuine, nice guy, to talk about why addiction and other kind of coping strategies, because that's what addiction is, become something that people with trauma and high sensitivity lean to. And the reason is that your internal sensations, anxiety is one of the main ones, feel so intolerable, you will do anything to quell that feeling. And often, alcohol, drugs do quell that temporarily, but of course they're not a long-term solution, and they lead to all their own problems. Now, I wrote about high sensitivity meeting trauma recently in my book, The Highly Sensitive Handbook, because I wanted to show that these are cumulative events. Right? And what seems to have triggered Matthew's, or Matty as he was called by his friends, his problems stem from the fact that his mum and dad split up by the time he was 1. And so a very, very early separation, which gave him tremendous feelings of abandonment. His dad obviously left. He lived with his mum until the age of 15, when he moved back to live with his dad. And that's what gave him the bug for acting, because his dad was an actor. But his mum seems to have been quite overworking. She worked really hard, obviously trying to keep the household going. And he learned to develop being funny as a way of relaxing her, so that he would get fed. And these are his own words. I'm not making this up. So he would make her laugh, and then she would cook him a meal. So it seems like there were some issues in the household growing up. And of course, as we know, trauma or ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, triple your risk for all manner of adult afflictions, long-term chronic illness, addictions, anxiety and depression, and so on. And so this was a classic case, really. And he did so well to find fame and to, be just a wonderful comedian. But he couldn't quite escape his demons. And that's the sad thing when you look at the way that it's dealt with in the mainstream medical model right now, which will take you through abstinence as the only path, but it doesn't really change the underlying driver, which is that at a deep bodily level, because trauma sits in the body, you feel abandoned or betrayed or humiliated or shamed. And so we have to go to the body, really, in order to help you rewire. Talking about it is the wrong angle because it's only dealing with the cognitive, which is only a small part of your functioning. And the body-based part is actually talking to a different part. It's talking to your unconscious brain, the part that is linked to your emotions and your physiology. And so in order to resolve these issues of abandonment or whatever it is you've been through, which are so common, talking about them, although it will help to give you a framing for what's wrong with you, doesn't change the way you feel because it's talking to your cortex, it's talking to your executive functioning, your reason, your analysis, your logical planning side. And most of these feelings are coming from a childlike unconscious belief. I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough, I hurt, I'm not safe. Very simple feeling-based sensations that originate in your unconscious back brain. And so trying to resolve these by talking about them doesn't change them, as we've seen with many examples of people who've been in therapy for years and struggling and still feeling rubbish and still feeling awful and like they don't belong. And so what I want to introduce you to is there's a new approach, and it comes in many, many different forms. So I'm not saying there's only one solution to this, but somatic approaches which use the responses in the body are just so much more powerful because they're talking to your unconscious back brain. And so things that involve movement, whether it's slowed down movement, like Tai Chi or yoga, or even in something called trauma release, TRE, where you kind of do certain movements and you make certain statements at the same time. There's somatic experiencing, which uses a similar connectivity, and it enables you to kind of just focus on the feeling as you move your body in certain ways. All of these light up your back brain and the memory that underlies the feeling sense of sadness, anger, abandonment, whatever it is, so that you can then rewire it. Now, I use EMDR, which is a eye movement desensitization and reprocessing treatment, but I also frame that within grounding tools and techniques because it's really important that you don't just launch into something without feeling safe. Safety is at the core of all these approaches that seek to rewire the underlying experiences that taught you that you were unsafe. And so I sometimes use havening. I use, which is a self-touch based grounding tool. I sometimes use tapping as well, which is very profound for dealing with emotions that need to be shifted, or beliefs. But EMDR is one of the most powerful tools, I think, for really getting to the bottom of the memory component of these feelings that are driving the behaviors. And so I am always sad, and very sad in this case, that somebody didn't get the right help they needed. I'm not saying it's a magic wand. I'm not saying it can treat absolutely everything, but in my experience so far, it's good for 80 to 90% of traumas, and certainly one-off traumas are very easily dealt with by EMDR. More complex relational trauma is also dealt with by EMDR, but it might take several sessions to fully resolve. but we're not talking years, and we're not talking thousands of sessions. We're talking maybe 10, 20. It's a very different approach, which uses the language of the body to communicate safety. And that is what was missing, sadly, for Matthew and many people like him. And so I just wanted to summarize really why I think the understanding of sensitivity and trauma combining is such an important one, and how it changes our brains to perceive threat more often than we do safety. And that is an intolerable way to live. And so, folks, we're mourning someone this week, but, you know, there are so many people out there who still suffer that we can help. So if this touches any nerves for you, then please reach out, get in touch, read the book, find out what things can be done. You don't need to suffer in silence. Okay, everybody, well, take care. Lots of love to you all. Bye for now.